Hello and welcome to Cities Skylines. We are looking at the beautiful area of Simmering. I'm sure I'm butchering all these names, but this is, I believe, an Austrian-themed area, and I think it's also based off a real location as well. This is made by Speed Tracks DJ here on Steam. I downloaded it from the workshop for this series. Simply that, well, I don't think I could make this even if you give me a few hundred hours. It is quite a beautiful sight to behold, having these snow-topped mountains and valleys going down into a lush green valley. And it's just a different kind of map than I have ever played for in Cities Skylines. And with this theme and the terrain, it's going to be an interesting challenge, I think, for us to make this all work in unison. We are going to be building probably smaller mountainside communities and connecting them via highway or train. So it's going to be an interesting build process as we get started on this first episode. So welcome, as I said, to Cities Skylines, and we are going to get to the building. So let's see what is the thing we want to do. I went ahead and I changed the map a little bit in terms of the LUT, the lighting engine, the roadways. I've actually gotten rid of all the default roadways running through because I kind of, want to use my own methods to get around rather than relying on the central highway that used to be running through this valley here. And I actually kind of want to start up here in the mountains, which is an interesting place considering that it's going to be tough getting water up here. It's going to be tough getting a lot of things around since there's just no good large water source except for maybe this lake up here. We're going to be doing a lot of real-time building in this series. It's not going to be 100% speed builds. We are going to be doing probably the first half of the video real-time, a bit of speed building involved after that, and then a bit more real-time building. I think it'll just be more interesting for me to work on it like that. You guys will get to see how some of this stuff gets laid out in real time, and also see how the struggle can be real. I actually kind of want to start on the back side of this mountain. I want to build like some sort of mountain community back here that's only really accessible by train. Of course, they're going to have a road that winds their way through here, but I think it would be a cool challenge to do that. I think this valley is pretty good space for that. We are using a bunch of mods, of course, to enable a lot of this. Of course, every one of these trees are a custom tree. Snow pines, partially covered snow pines, and then of course down in the valley we have normal pine trees, but we have, of course, all the assortments and necessities that we need to make something hopefully pretty great. I want some good tunnelways and like scenic routes for these trains as well, so that'll be an interesting challenge. Let's first off go ahead, take a look at the terrain. You can see it's very rugged. That's going to be a interesting thing to try and get over. Boy, I totally just flattened that out there. Okay, hold on. Brush size, please increase. Thank you. Brush strength. Holy cow, that is a bit too strong. Too strong. There we go. Okay, forgot how strong the sensitivity can get on these terrain editing tools. So I'm just gonna increase this up a little bit here. Not too much. We're just gonna get some beginning little areas that we can kind of connect together later. This initial town is probably going to be a lot of residential. It's probably going to be a little bit of industrial, not too much, and just a little bit of commercial. Now, we're not going to follow Ryko to the T, the actual demands that we have down here, but we might reference them a little bit for just some inspiration as we get to building here. We're just gonna flatten some of this out. There we go. Watch all those trees rotate around as I edit the terrain. And I'm trying to keep the valley intact. I'm just giving us some flat spots to put some buildings because that is going to look better than if they kind of just carve out the terrain too much. I'm also gonna go ahead and select pretty much all these trees and just get them out of the way so we can kind of see what we're working with. Alright, so this little town, I will be taking name suggestions for towns and districts, areas, and stuff like that. So do leave comments down below if you guys want to help me name some of these areas. Okay, let's get like a high road going up and across here that we can then connect to other areas. Try and start with a straight section of probably 15, 16 units or so. And you see this is gonna change the terrain a bit as we build, and that's okay. So 15, and then I guess we'll just keep this in terms of 15 by 15 going up through here. We do have Move It installed, so I'm not too worried about the actual initial look of a lot of these areas, because what we can do is adjust these nodes accordingly. That's probably one of my favorite mods to have is Move It, because you can do things like, say you don't like the gradient here, you can go over and adjust some of the central points and just try and get that to be a little bit better, a little bit more of a smooth, natural curve up the hillside as it curves up that way. This one will probably hug closer to the mountainside. So we'll go 11. Find 11 there. Okay. And I'm fine with keeping it go up. You know, the road can go up and down a little ways, because, you know, that's just what a road can do. You know, unlike train tracks, they can increase and decrease their height rather rapidly. Common trick is to try and smooth these out. Get all that. Alright, let's see if I can't get this to look a little bit more smooth than it is already. It's not too bad. Move It tool, of course, is gonna probably help us out a lot here. I think if I move that node a bit over, I think that's a bit smoother. Okay, cool. So this is one of the central spines of this small little mountainside community being formed here. We want a couple other one of these going down. Yeah, I kind of like this 90-degree coming off like that. That can be cool. And then 10 and 10. Okay, there we go. And this is gonna hopefully be a nice loose town. Nothing too fancy on this one. It's gonna have just a couple main roads. Everything else should hopefully fall into place just using simple 2-lane plain streets. These ones just are gonna hopefully look a little bit more proper. How is the slope on this hill? It is a little steep, but that's fine. We can adjust accordingly. There we go. I kind of wish there was a smooth tool, to be honest, for roads. That would be a real handy mod, in my opinion, if we had something like that. Because right now you can see this hump is just barely there, but that's okay. Let's grab our smooth tool for terrain, however, and just smooth out this slope a lot. There we go. So it does gain height, but it doesn't gain it at a crazy pace. So it does make some sense there. And let's go ahead and I think place down our first building. This is going to be kind of one of the anchor points of this town, and it is going to be kind of a passenger line for transportation. So we do have some custom, nice, minimalistic coverings for stations. So we're going to grab that, and then I am going to move it. So let's just move you away from there. Probably be ideal if I built a parking lot here and some other access ways than just simply what we have in that section. So we'll come up basically straight over, just like that. Just going right there in front, and we can put parking lots, some other parking lots. I'm not quite sure how we want to run the tracks. We'll probably have to build a tunnel, obviously, due to the mountains being to either side, but that's fine. I think that's fine. And I might even be able to kind of curve up the road across to the other side over this way, so that we can maybe get a few more industrial buildings on this side. Okay, so let's expand out the tracks a little bit. Not too much, but just probably 10 units in each direction. Alright, and you can see that's already kind of forming a bit of a terrain problem, you could say. So let's get rid of this tree here, because it's a bit in the way. And then we're going to grab this, and we're going to make this flat again. Alright. And then we are going to upgrade it to a tunnel. Or maybe we'll just push the mountain back 10. I want a lot of the track pretty visible, because otherwise, if you can't see the train, what's the point in having one, right? So that's kind of like a large station area that we can do there. Looks okay. My only problem is I do have longer trains than normal, so this crossing, you know, trains might be blocking this in general, so that may be something to watch out for as we move into the speed build section here. Alright guys, so what we're going to be doing here initially is extending a second bypass lane for trains. This way we can hopefully avoid what we were just talking about, in the sense that the initial train here at the station isn't going to stop all traffic going through. And we are also going to have to build some bridges up through the mountainside, as you can see there, and try and do this in an interesting looking way. Initially I tried to get a bridge to go across the actual tunnel entrances there, but it ended up just not looking good. The train had a lot of tearing with this section, so I decided to just kind of push the mountain back a little bit, let those concrete kind of canals kind of sit forward and be their own thing, and that way we can just kind of fill it in with some of these large rocks in the back here, just so we can make this a little bit more detailed. Now, there aren't a lot of snowy bushes and grasses and things like that, so what we're going to be doing is trying to mix in more evergreens, partially covered snowy pine trees, and more of the additional, usual snow-covered trees that we have. But any broad leaf trees up here in the heavily snowed-in area, not gonna have any leaves on it. I do have a couple variations of the trees without the broad leaves on it, and it's just kind of a empty tree in that sense. We're going to be adding this low kind of wall here, just along this cliff edge, just to make sure no one, haphazardly kind of walks off the sidewalk up here over that way. Adding some more rocks on the upper section over there, and that's just to make this look a little bit more detailed. I've been running into the issue that the textures with Cities Skylines, especially when you get to cliffs, are kind of fuzzy. They're not overly detailed or anything like that. They don't look too amazing, but if you're able to use that as a base and then put your own pieces of rocks over them, then you are pretty well off, I think. So this station is going to have a parking lot, of course, on one side, and on the other side, it wouldn't be the start of a series with Uthris never making a parking lot, you know? It is something that it seems to be my hallmark at this point, so we might as well get started on one. Just trying out some different grasses and things to make it seem like it's usable along the edge, kind of where the track fades off into the snow, but nothing really seems to work there. So it might be something I had to just keep looking for here on the Steam Workshop, which, you know, once I get the collection kind of made and a little bit more finalized, I'll release a link to it in the description down below for y'all. So we're going to be kind of coloring this in using a lot of these prefabricated and functional parking lots. I'm not going to go with like a parking garage anywhere here because some of the reference images that I was looking at in, say, like Europe, specifically like Sweden or Norway, they have a lot of these kind of light commuter rail stops, and they just have kind of a parking lot on either side of these stations, and then they just kind of go from there. I didn't want just perfectly square parking lots either. It kind of does that in the middle, but I figured it'd be nice to have kind of an interesting shape on either end. That way they kind of work together. And this surprisingly took me way more time than I wanted it to. But doing things like this is totally worth it in games such as Cities Skylines, you know, Planet Coaster, and all that fun stuff. Even The Sims, I guess. So, yeah, taking our time, dividing this up a little bit more, making sure all of these have access to some proper side streets so cars can actually come over, pull into them, and park. And that way we can get, you know, less prop count in terms of me having to make these things look like they're constantly filled in. I might add one or few cars that are already parked simply to make it look used at all times during the video. But currently, that's not in the immediate plan, as you know, you just kind of have to find your way into a lot of the space filling of these parking lots. It's kind of one of the fun and more interesting things when you do something like this is fitting these grids of spaces into an odd shape like this. It's a big challenge. You can even go back in, add the other small details such as these like planters, you know, put some light posts in them. Sadly, for some reason, it seems like they like to float above the ground, so I have to kind of manually select them at that point and then sink them back into the ground. But that's fine, you know, that's what the Move It tool and I think the one of the prop tool mods that I have that allows props to kind of stack on top of each other and function. That way you can kind of build props on top of buildings and make your own roof lines, you know, and maybe some items like that. In the future of this little series, we are going to be adding a little bit of a fence going around the parking lot and also along the rail line there. We are using better rails, and it looks really good. The only problem is the stations always have the default rails, and so it can be a little jarring looking at that weird bright silver crossing there. If you guys know anything in the comments, I might fix that, or any ideas for mods, do let me know down below. Here, trying to come up with a more interesting center look here for the main parking, kind of closest to the entrance, and I thought about, you know, making it open to the road, but then I realized, well, that's just too much traffic. We're gonna only have 2 entry points coming into this parking lot, 1 entry, 1 exit. That way traffic kind of flows in a big circle. We went ahead and put lines across there just to make it pedestrian safe. This back side has some more parking spaces. We also have I think that is a road maintenance building there, and eventually I'll put in some structures just to make it look like an older industrial area. That still needs a lot of work to it, just to flesh it out. But this side's going to be like the old parking lot for it. Needs plenty of decals, something I still need to go back and do, but that's just kind of the way it is with Cities Skylines. It doesn't ever seem like you're done. It's just you spend so much time detailing something out, and there's just always something that you can add back in there. Here you can see these sloped kind of parking lots and roadways that we have can be a little bit of a trouble and eyesore when you are making this kind of stuff in Cities Skylines. The terrain tool likes to kind of nat build things on a slope. If something is flat, it'll flatten itself out onto the slope, and then just create a ridge to either side, very similar to Transport Fever in that sense, and it can kind of make the thing look a little bit ugly. Just testing some textures and some terrain bits up there as well. We also have another bridge on the far right, which is something we might get to see at the final little couple pans. I did record a couple of those just so we can, get some cinematic shots in there. Yeah, so we are going to align this with utmost precision because it takes me a long time to do so. I have a lot of trouble selecting some of these parking grids when it comes to these final little bits and bobs. So at this point, we're gonna go ahead and end the speed build here. We're gonna look at some more cinematic shots of our new series, and we'll leave you with this first episode. If you guys enjoyed the stuff, feel free to subscribe to my channel for more creative goodness such as this. Hit that like button, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next episode of Cities Skylines.